Hey, welcome back to our study here. We're looking at Genesis chapter 33 before the chapter 34, which is always a fun one to go through. But here in 33, we saw a peaceful departure of Esau, leaving, not killing everyone like the fear was, and Esau's gone back home. I was thinking about Proverbs 16:7, and it says, "When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him." And we saw in Jacob, in this study, a man that by God-given right could have demanded that he received what is due him, namely the subservience of his brother, right? His brother was supposed to be servant of him. And he could have demanded the land which God had given him. He could have gone in there and said, okay, God gave me the land. You Canaanites are freeloaders. I'm not paying you any use for my land. You can get off my land. He could have started creating an army and said, okay, I'm going to wipe these people out. But it wasn't time for that yet, and God didn't tell him to do that. So he doesn't go ahead of God. He doesn't go ahead. Eventually that time will come, right? But God says there will come a time when the sins of the Amorites will be full, and then we'll go in and then that'll be the end of their time in the land. But the time hadn't come yet. That'll become later on with Moses and eventually with Joshua as he brings the people in to the land and begins to conquer the land. But the time is not yet. Jacob doesn't do that. He pays the land. He's trying to live peacefully with these people. Even though Jacob instead, he decides to humble himself, which is pretty kind of shocking, for this guy. But he's learned over the years, I gotta be humble. I wasn't humble before, and it got me all kinds of trouble. And now I need to humble. And God has been humbling him through his servant to Laban for all those years. And so instead he humbles himself too. He humbles himself before God by creating that altar, and he humbles himself before men, before the people of the land, and plus Esau. Even though he feared greatly, Jacob did not cower or run from his problems. You notice that. When he humbled himself, he might have been afraid. He might have greatly feared. But he doesn't turn tail and run back to Laban. He doesn't, try to flee. And he still goes back into the land of Canaan, even though there could be problems. And so he doesn't, even though he might be afraid, he doesn't turn to a coward. He doesn't run from the problems. And that's what humble people do. So he approached his problems with a humble reliance on God. His humility did not negate his fear, but it allowed him to face Esau and the 400 men who had come out for his destruction. Humility is not the same as cowardice. Humility is not weakness. Jesus was our perfect example of this. He had a humble boldness that disarmed his enemies, frankly, and left them dumbfounded. They didn't know what to say. In the end, they're like, yeah, okay, we don't really know what to say to you anymore, so we're just going to leave. Which is what happens when you are humble, but yet you're bold. You're humble, but there's a confidence in that humbleness. Even in the face of fear, there's a confidence. See, afraid, there's a fearful confidence, which is kind of contradictory, but that's what happens in Jacob, Doesn't run. He could be, afraid, but still confident in the Lord. And so he humbled himself. And remember Jesus. Jesus is our perfect example. Jesus is the one who confounded his opponents, but he also humbled himself even to death on a cross. And yet in that very act of humiliation on the cross, the ultimate act of humbleness, he is triumphing over sin. He's defeating the enemy. So in his act of humility, he is winning. He is beating the enemy in humility. So you see, God has put humility and strength together. Humility and power go hand in hand. You can't have power, true power, without humility. Now you can have a false power. You can have a worldly power that has no humility in it. And you just crush people like a tyrant, right? We've seen that in the past in the world. That is power without humility. And that won't last forever. It'll be destroyed. good people that God has called and has, created goodness in them, they rise up against that. The humble that God is, He exalts them. But humility and strength go hand in hand. True humility, true strength. The Bible says that the Lord lifts up the humble. That's Psalm 147:6. For the Lord takes pleasure in His people. He adorns the humble with salvation. Psalm 149:4. To the humble He gives favor. Proverbs 3:34. With the humble is wisdom. Proverbs 11:2. Whoever humbles themselves like a child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 18:4. He who humbles himself will be exalted. Luke 14:11. But there's also a warning here. We are to humble ourselves now. God has promised that if you are haughty, prideful, arrogant, then He will humble you. God opposes the proud, and great is the fall of that prideful person. God will see that all will be humble before Him. But either you come before Him in humility, you've humbled yourself before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and you bow down to Him, or you come before Him in humiliation, because He will bow you down, and He will put His foot on your neck in a sign of your ultimate humiliation. No one wants that. No one desires that. So the idea is you need to humble yourself now. Don't think of yourself. Really get rid of that pride. It's not about you. You gotta let go of that pride. You gotta humble yourself now. But if you humble yourself now, the Lord has promised He will exalt you. And guess what? If you exalt yourself in this life, if you try to gain to the highest level that you can in this life, then guess what? You might do that. You might get to an exalted level in this life. But in the end, you're going to die. This life is over. And your exaltedness looks like trash compared to those who humble themselves in this life. Maybe they don't really get anywhere. Maybe they get no recognition at all. Maybe no one cares about them. But God will say, I'm going to take these humble, meek people down here, and I'm going to exalt them. These people who were last, who you treated like trash and garbage, now they're going to be the first. They're going to be the preeminent ones in the kingdom of heaven. What? But exactly what God says. So we need to humble ourselves every day, every moment of the day, and realize, like Jacob said, my children aren't mine. These wives aren't my, these are not my doing. The animals aren't my doing. These are all gifts of God. Everything I have is a gift of God. The fact that I can see you and not be destroyed is a gift of God. Everything is a gift. When you start thinking that way, like my health is a gift from God, right? If my health begins to fail, that's still a gift from God, because I have a health that can fail. That was a gift. If my eyesight goes bad, maybe I go blind. Well, the fact that I had even one day, maybe I never had, maybe I was born blind, but I still have life. I've been given other senses. All of that is an undeserved favor from God. Everything is a gift. Think about that. Even the trials, the things that you've lost, like the fact that you even had something to lose is a gift. That really changes the way you look at things. And I have to remind myself of that quite often. Like, you don't deserve anything you have. You don't deserve, what you deserve, Dave, is eternal punishment, hell. That's it. That's all. So if you have anything else besides hell, you're good, man. You are good. Be content with that. Because what you deserve, you're not getting. But what you don't deserve, you've gotten tons of. Everything that you have is undeserved. So think about that. I've been trying to think about that more and more recently, as I've been thinking about like healthcare and stuff like that. And I work as a chaplain at a hospital, and I think about any moment that you have is really a gift. The fact that you can have declining health, the fact that you have cancer is a gift, because you have life, you have a body, you exist. That's a gift from God. and it's not hell. You know, it's still this side of hell, and that's a gift. So yeah, think about those things, and I think those are the things of heaven. Those are the things that you should think about, and it'll change the way you make decisions or the way you look at problems in your life. Because you look at them as like, wow, the reason why I have this problem is because it's a gift. This problem is a gift compared to what I actually do deserve, because I deserve the worst. So think on these things, and I'll catch you back here next time as we look at Genesis 34. Not a happy chapter. So come back to that. There's some important stuff in there. God put it in the Bible for a reason, and these things are written so that we might believe. These things are written for our instruction, correction, rebuke, for training in righteousness. And that's what we'll do next time. So come on back next week for our next study.